Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thanks for joining us today.
Cool.
First of all, tell us a little bit about where you work.
I work at the State Highway Administration in the Cultural Resources section. And I think we're sort of one of Maryland's better kept secrets. People are often surprised to find that so many archaeologists and architectural historians are employed by the Highway Administration. But our job is to balance the needs of the transportation system with preserving cultural resources in Maryland. So that includes archaeological sites and historic structures. And I'm on point for archaeological sites.
You guys do great work there
Well,
at
thank
State
you.
Highways. Yeah, I'm a big fan. So tell us what is your favorite thing about your job?
I think the fact that every day is different is one of my favorite things. It's often, I do have a lot of repetitive tasks, but I can always be surprised. Every project brings its own new complications and challenges, and that's always pretty exciting. So I feel like I've been on a constant learning curve the whole time I've been there. And I'm pretty comfortable with that level of challenge, always learning things about Maryland and the history and prehistory of the state. Um, but also developing new ways to get that information out to the public in a way that really connects with people. So those are some of the things that I like about it. We have a great group of people, and I really, really enjoy my coworkers.
Oh, that's important. That's
Yeah.
super important. Yeah, for sure. How long have you been with State Highways?
It is 14 years this year.
Wow.
I know.
Congratulations. Well, even before State Highways, how did you get into archaeology? And also, what has kept you in it all these years?
That's a great question. I ask myself that all the time. I think almost everybody I've ever met has thought about being an archaeologist at some point. And a lot of people, perhaps wisely, allowed themselves to be persuaded that there aren't any jobs in this field and went into something more immediately lucrative and sustainable. But so I think that there's an element of sort of optimism and romanticism about archaeology that draws people in. But I think what keeps us there is the challenges of problem solving. So I feel like if you were going to set a trap to catch an archaeologist, you could leave an unsolved jigsaw puzzle or crossword somewhere in a room, and whoever goes and obsessively has to finish it, there's a good likelihood that that's an archaeologist. I think that, it brings unique challenges, and I like solving puzzles and problems and mysteries that you can't Google. So archaeological sites and the information that we get and the meanings that it has for people in the present, those are all things that ungoogleable things where you're creating that information for the first time based on things that you're discovering. And there's something really addictive and enjoyable about that, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. It occurs to me another way to catch an archaeologist might be to put a bunch of pottery sherds on a table and watch them sort them.
Sort, or see if they mend, or put them in their mouth.
Exactly. All of those things.
Yeah.
So tell us about your Maryland Archaeology Month topic. What did you write about?
So the Maryland Archaeology Month topic has very little to do with my actual job. So in addition to the work that I do with State Highway, my husband, Jason Schellenhammer, and I, in 2014, we started a public archaeology project in Baltimore City. I think something that I wish more people knew, but people are often surprised to hear that there's no city archaeologist in Baltimore. There's no comprehensive cultural resource management plan for the city of Baltimore. And after living here for a few years, we realized, the things are happening and there's no attention being paid to these archaeological sites that are being destroyed or damaged. And yet the history here is amazing. It goes so far back in time. So we were looking for a project, and we were fortunate to connect with Baltimore Heritage and start this program in Herring Run Park in Northeast Baltimore in 2014. And the site that we decided to focus on was Utah Farm. And it is it has been a gift in so many ways. I think for me, there have been so few opportunities to spend, I mean, it's almost 10 years now, thinking about investigating and exploring a site. It's really rare to get to spend that kind of time doing this kind of work with communities that still live here today. And the site itself, it has a little something of everything. There's a Native American component that goes back between 6 and 11,000 years. There's a very early, for this area, colonial piece that dates to about the 1680s. And then the sort of most represented part of the site is this house that was originally built in 1762 that burned down in 1865. And it really speaks to a couple of fairly significant wealthy white families and at least 2 African-American families that continue to live here in Northeast Baltimore today. And it has been a really rich site in terms of the archaeological data, the artifacts, but also just in terms of outreach to communities. I think it's been really powerful, and it's shown people how archaeology works and what it can do in terms of our understanding of the places where we live and who we are.
Well, since the topic of Maryland Archaeology Month is context, talk a little bit about that, about how the context of where you're finding all of these artifacts from the different components helps you kind of understand better what's going on at the site.
Right. So, the context is something that we really try to emphasize. We have volunteers of all experience levels who have come out and work with us, and people of all ages. And, I think when you're working on a site that's active, it's pretty clear, that we're not just pulling things out willy-nilly. And although that tends to be what people immediately engage with first, is like, oh, like this person can tell me what this is. And, we certainly can point to an artifact and give you the date and tell you what it was a piece of. But being there on the site, standing in the exact place where all of these things happened and all of these people lived, and seeing it come out of the ground from a particular location, and having us at the end of the day sort of walk through and explain how we would interpret what we've found based on where things came out of the ground and where they are relative to one another. And how, all of these fiddly little details that we're painstakingly recording kind of communicate to each other to create this story that we can now tell. So, I think for Utah, context is everything. It would be really easy to go out there, dig a random hole, and find a couple things that are interesting and take those home. There's nothing, that's whole. Everything's little bits. But you would be able to say what it is, but you wouldn't be able to say what it means. And having a site like Utah, where the house burned down in 1865 and then basically nothing happened there. The area was turned into a park. Nothing was ever built on top of it. There was really minimal interference with it from, they basically just let trees grow on it at the end. Gives us the ability, and it's really powerful, to put this story together as we excavate. And I think it's super duper important for Utah, because we need to be able to pick out like who's who, since we have a little bit of everybody. And we can only do that if we take particular note of contexts.
For sure. And also, the fact that you share this with the people, with the residents of Baltimore and, people who are just interested in archaeology is great, that they have that hands-on lesson.
Right.
So why do you think that this is an important topic that we're talking about right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's always important. I think that archaeology has always been a little bit in the public eye. And I think that, it's important for us as archaeologists to present what we do as accurately and completely as we can. And I think maybe one of the things, I've been thinking about this a lot with our project, we take volunteers for the excavation, we take volunteers for cleaning and cataloging artifacts, but it's harder to take volunteers for really crunching that data and how we sort of reconstruct the site in order to tell the story about it and write a report or an article or something. And that's the part where context is really key, but that's the part that volunteers often don't understand because they haven't done it. It's just not as volunteer friendly as the other aspects of excavation. So I think that for, a lot of it sort of seems like, okay, you go dig a hole, you find a bunch of stuff, you figure out what it is, and then magic happens, and then we know the story. And it's the sort of magical part that disappears from people's consciousness, but that's the part where the context becomes so important. So I think that perhaps we present our work as being too simple when in fact it's enormously labor intensive and complicated. But the benefit and the payoff of that work is that all of us benefit from this understanding of what was happening in our shared past as Americans in this case. So I think it's important to be talking about context just in general to get that across, that it is complicated, hard to understand, difficult to do, but that's where the story comes from. I also think it's important because I know that since the pandemic, so many people have taken up hobbies and developed a real interest in local history, things that they can do outside their local parks and historic sites. And, with this piece of our puzzle assembly kind of, being lost in the mist of whatever archaeologists do, I feel like a lot of people are exploring sites in a way that is maybe not beneficial for everyone. And emphasizing, especially in a place like Baltimore City, where we have so few cultural resource protections, that every time a site is looted or damaged in some way, that's a loss for all of us. Even if you get a little bit of information in terms of what this thing is that somebody found, you'll never know what information is gone now. And, that makes it something that's really difficult to talk about, because on the one hand, it's like, well, you didn't have that information before, and now you never will. Was it important? We'll never know. It almost doesn't feel like it's such a big deal. But, having explored a lot of archaeological sites, I'm pretty sure that it almost always is.
No, that's really well said. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time today and for your efforts and sharing, amazing public archaeology with people of Baltimore. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.